Once upon a time, I was a liberal. On May 26th of this year, I said these words and a whole lot more in a video I put out talking about why I was walking away from liberalism and the Democratic Party. I knew I wasn't alone in wanting to walk away. I knew there were countless others feeling the same way. I knew that I could no longer be a part of a political party that has embraced a platform of lies, fear-mongering, division, false platitudes, and the disingenuous messaging to minority groups in America that they exist in a system of oppression that will guarantee failure. The Democratic Party has been supported in these slick marketing tactics by their fake news media mouthpiece and the illogical liberal ideology that has become a gospel for this party. I knew that what held me back for so long from wanting to act on this knowledge and walk away was fear. Fear of being cut off and abandoned by friends, fear of career and economic reprisal, fear of being accused of embracing racism, bigotry, and hate. But sometimes all it takes is one person to step forward and say loudly and clearly, something is very wrong here. The emperor is not wearing clothes. And so I said what I had to say, and I launched the WalkAway campaign. I encouraged everybody to stand up and speak out, to create their own video and written testimonials, to tell their truth, to use their voices. I told the world that it was time for the silent majority to become unsilent. And one by one, people, not only across the country, but all over the world, began to speak. You all began to share your stories. Those of you who have walked away told us about your fears and your pain. For some of you, walking away cost you lifelong friendships. For some of you, walking away cost you family. For others, job opportunities were lost because you had the bravery to say that from this day forward, you will no longer thoughtlessly be a part of the hive mind, the tribal mentality, the irrational and ill-informed mob cruelty that has become omnipresent on the left. But it wasn't only those walking away from liberalism in the Democratic Party that needed to speak up. It was time for those on the right to make their voices heard as well. And you did. Patriots all across the country and around the globe began making their testimonials too. You stepped up to set the story straight about what it means to be a conservative in America. You boldly pushed back against the lies and false accusations of the liberal media, which has branded you all racists, bigots, homophobes, deplorables, the dregs of society. But perhaps even more important than setting your own story straight, you extended a hand across the aisle and provided kindness and support to those who are leaving the left. You walk with those who walk away. The patriots within the WalkAway campaign began to open their hearts and bare their souls, and what happened next surprised even me. We found civility again. We reclaimed our common humanity. Despite political and ideological differences, we engaged with one another with understanding, dignity, and respect, and we rediscovered hope. We didn't shy away from asking the tough questions of one another that we've previously avoided asking out of concern that we might offend one another or that, God forbid, we might be temporarily uncomfortable. And through this process, bridges were built. Trust and understanding between us was born. We discovered that we're just really not that different from one another in the end. As the WalkAway campaign quickly steamed out of the station like a speeding locomotive, my heart swelled with pride at what we had achieved and what we had created. Most of you I will never know, and yet every single one of you has a piece of my heart. But then something began to happen. As the world began to talk more and more about this growing movement, the liberal media could no longer ignore me, this campaign, or my growing legion of Russian bots. Oh yes, I still have yet to receive a single phone call from CNN, MSNBC, the Huffington Post, or the New York Times, or any of the other usual suspects for an interview or even a statement, but that has not stopped any of them from printing stories about this movement, the WalkAway campaign. They have called us Russian propaganda, Russian bots, paid actors, fake testimonials from fake people. Well, I say fake news. As story after story from the left came out invalidating your voices, your stories, and your existence, I became very angry. Not for myself or the campaign that I had begun, but for the thousands and thousands of people who had bravely stood up, many of you speaking out for the first time in your lives, only to have the leftist media try to slap you down once again. The same media that loves to talk about you, but would never dream of talking to you. They have attacked you, lied about you, and they have tried to silence you. And they thought they thought it would work because they've gotten away with it so many times before. But it didn't work this time, did it? Because the silent majority has become unsilent. And we will never be silent again. And who exactly is this unsilent majority that the liberal media and the Democratic Party are so out of touch with? Well, I will tell you exactly who we are. We are African Americans. We are Hispanic Americans. We are Asian Americans. We are Caucasian Americans. We are straight, gay, lesbian, and transgender Americans. Are you noticing a pattern yet? Because you should. We are Americans. And no matter how hard the left tries to make it so, our differences will not divide us. We will all stand united, shoulder to shoulder as Americans, because we walked away alone, but now we march together. Over the past 5 months, I've received thousands upon thousands of messages from people around the world telling me that this movement, the WalkAway campaign, has given them back something that they had lost: hope. Some of them even told me that this campaign has saved them. Many have felt so lost and left behind that they felt our future was unsalvageable. Many people have called me a hero, but I can assure you I am the unlikeliest hero. I grew up in a tiny town in rural Nebraska. I didn't go to college. I spent years spiraling in addiction to drugs and alcohol. I am a gay man. Any one of these things might indicate that I would never be an appropriate candidate for the position I find myself in today. All of them combined would make it seem an impossibility. And yet, I know that if not for these very attributes, this movement would never have come to pass. In a few months, I will have 4 years of sobriety. Without which, none of this would have ever happened. Through my sobriety and working the 12 steps with a sponsor, I learned the necessary values of accountability, honesty, and acceptance, though I still struggle with that one. I learned that all I can do is be honest, and that it's really not my business what anyone else thinks about me. I learned to apologize when I had done wrong to somebody, even if they had wronged me and they themselves weren't sorry, though I still struggle with that one. And in the process of healing myself emotionally, I began to heal from the scars that decades of exposure to homophobia had done, that had cut into my soul. I learned that there really is no such thing as being a victim just because of who you are. All of us start at different points in life. To compare is to despair. We are all responsible for our own outcomes, and the only person who can hold you back is you. In sobriety, I began to truly see that hard work reaps its own rewards. The essential truth that exists within personal empowerment can only be achieved when we rise up from failure and try again. When we refuse to see ourselves as incapable, when we stop believing that there is any truth to the words, "I can't." I began to see the fundamental flaws in an ideology that tells entire groups of people they can't because the color of their skin, their sexual orientation, their gender will prevent them from ever having a fair chance. That their failures in life are not lessons from which they can grow, but the results of a rigged system from which they can never break free from. In 2016, I voted for Hillary Clinton. The story has a happy ending, hold on. I voted for Hillary Clinton because I was told we needed a woman president. I was devastated when Donald Trump got elected because the media, whom I had placed my trust in, had told me for months that America had elected a bigot, a racist, a homophobe, a monster. I would rant on social media often after the election, demanding answers as to how anybody could do this to America. What had happened to the conscience and the soul of middle America? How could you all be so duplicitous and hateful? Nobody would answer me. 2 months after the election, I ranted on Facebook that I would never be able to understand how anybody, including the people from Nebraska that I thought I knew, could vote for a man who mocked a reporter's disability before a cheering crowd. And finally, somebody answered. Diane, are you here? She's here. Wave. A woman I had known my whole life, a staunchly Christian conservative named Diane, reached out to me and sent me a video entitled "Debunking that Trump Mocked the Disabled Reporter." Many of you have heard this story, I'll make it brief. It's a compilation of footage from YouTube showing Donald Trump doing the same voice and the same gesture that he's done numerous times the day he mocked that reporter's disability. But the commonality is that he was making fun of someone who was caught in a lie or doing something shady or groveling because they'd been caught doing something dishonest. This is the first time I realized that the media was capable of lying straight to your face, of creating a narrative beforehand and then finding evidence to support that narrative. This sent me on a journey of research throughout most of 2017. I learned many things about the Obama administration that the liberal media never bothered to talk about. I learned that Obama dissenters weren't the racists that I'd been told they were, but Americans who had placed their trust in a man expecting hope and change, and in return got broken communities, joblessness, vilified, and forgotten. I learned that with Hillary Clinton, we would have gotten more of the same, except this time we'd likely never make our way back. I learned about the ways in which the Democratic Party and the liberal media pretend to care about black people and gay people and immigrants and any other group that they claim to care about, but instead keep these communities paralyzed by manipulating their fears and concerns about how they are perceived by the world around them. At first, I tried to have conversations with fellow liberals, and I was met with a wall of hostile refusals and denials. People did not want to hear that perhaps real life wasn't as bad as they were being told by the mainstream media. I found that I wasn't safe having these conversations, and so I retreated within myself. Every night I would get into bed and seek out more information, more reading, watching more videos, seeking more answers to more questions. I began to listen to the conservative point of view for the first time in my life. I had never wanted to hear it before, and I felt myself beginning to change, finding a love and understanding for the thoroughly maligned and misunderstood people of Middle America. I saw clearly how the left has tried to intimidate and quiet those on the right with harmful labels like bigot and racist, falsely assigning these labels to anybody who disagrees with them to silence us and force us into a conservative closet. Well, I've done the closet before, and I'm not going back in there. And I'm not going to allow any other person to ever be shoved into a closet again either. I knew that this campaign would come with enormous personal risk, but I thought to myself, here I am after all these years, still finding my way in terms of a career, Truth be told, I had less to lose than so many others who are afraid of putting lifelong careers at risk. Somebody needed to step up and say what needed to be said, and I felt a call to duty, that there was just no justifiable reason for me to be silent. It's not a coincidence that our president is the person who he is, or that I am the person who I am. We're all being sent a very distinct message right now from above. It's time for us to shake away old ideas. It's time for all of us to change. The world is changing now. A great awakening is happening, and it is so exciting. It's time for all of us to cast away ancient prejudices and preconceived notions about race, about sexual orientation, and all the other isms that have kept us separated and at odds for so long. 55 years ago, at another march on Washington, Martin Luther King Jr. stood not far from where I stand today and told the world about a dream in which we as people would not judge one another by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. Don't you think it's time? To the LGBT community, I have a personal message straight from my heart. I have always been with you. I will always be with you, even if you don't yet understand what I am doing. The world has changed, and it is time for all of us to forgive one another and move on without fear and skepticism of one another. I would never be standing with those I stand with today or doing what I am doing if I thought for a moment that harm would come to my LGBT brothers and sisters. I am no longer afraid of the Republican Party. And I am asking you not to be as well. I am asking you in the LGBT community to do what may be one of the hardest things you'll ever be asked to do. Let go of the past, forgive, and begin to trust in your fellow man again. WalkAway was never about hatred of Democrats, but about leaving in civility. It is about unity, compassion, empathy, understanding. It has always been about love. And finally, a message to the Republican Party. Many of those who have walked away are not yet ready to embrace your party, but are willing to do something on November 6th that they never in their lives thought they would do for the good of the future of America. They are willing to vote red. To the Republican Party, do not let us down. We are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And whenever and wherever the people are not being heard, you can be sure that we will walk away. This is only the beginning for the WalkAway campaign. Going forward into 2019 and 2020 and beyond, the united people of this campaign will forever make our voices heard and stand in solidarity and support. We have amazing plans for this movement going forward. We are just getting started. I thank you all for coming here today to support me, to support this campaign, and make your voices heard, and to show every human being that they will never walk away alone, because now we march together.